Title: Rikers Island Escape Attempts. Why No One Gets Out. The Wall That Never Breaks. Before we dive into this insane true crime story, hit subscribe if you love deep dives into real-life mysteries and prison legends that blur the line between fear and fascination. Because what you're about to hear is the story Rikers Island doesn't want anyone to remember. Rikers Island, a concrete fortress floating in the murky waters of New York City's East River, just a few miles from the glittering skyline of Manhattan. But inside, it's another world. Brutal, unforgiving, and impossible to escape. Or, at least, that's what they say. In the winter of 1992, that myth was about to be tested. At precisely 2:43 a.m., a corrections officer named Patrick Vega was making his rounds through the north wing of the NAM Cross Center, one of Rikers' most notorious facilities. His flashlight cut through the dark like a blade, slicing across the rows of cells filled with murmuring inmates. Everything was normal until he reached cell 307. The bed was empty. At first, Vega thought the inmate was in the showers. But then he noticed something else. The steel vent cover above the bed had been unscrewed, one bolt at a time. He froze. The air duct was just big enough for a man to crawl through. And the name on the cell door made his stomach turn. LaMarcus Green. A name that had already become legend behind bars. LaMarcus Green wasn't just another inmate. Born and raised in the Bronx, he'd been a street hustler turned shot caller by the time he was 21. He built his empire on loyalty and fear, running drugs, weapons, and extortion through New York's underground network like a chess master. But what set him apart wasn't the violence. It was his discipline. He didn't drink. He didn't use. And he ran his operation like a business. By the late 80s, federal investigators called him the most calculated mind in East Coast crime. When Green was finally caught, it wasn't by force, it was through betrayal. A partner he trusted since childhood flipped on him for a reduced sentence. The feds raided Green's penthouse apartment, finding stacks of cash, unregistered weapons, and coded ledgers of his entire operation. He was sentenced to 35 years, and they sent him to Rikers Island to await federal transfer. That was their first mistake. For months, Green had been studying the prison, every hallway, every guard rotation. He'd even manipulated maintenance crews into inspecting his vent for mold, just to measure its dimensions. No one questioned it. He was calm, respectful, the kind of inmate who didn't make noise. But he was waiting. According to prison logs later released in the investigation, Green had quietly formed a team inside, inmates with specific skills. One who worked kitchen duty and had access to cleaning chemicals, another who handled laundry and could move around unnoticed, and one who'd been an electrician before his arrest. Together, they planned what was supposed to be the impossible, an escape from Rikers Island. When Officer Vega saw that empty cell, the alarm sounded across the facility. Sirens echoed down the cold concrete halls. Searchlights swept across the island, cutting through the fog that hung over the East River. Guards searched every corridor, every vent, every trash chute. By sunrise, Green was still missing. The warden ordered a full lockdown. Helicopters scanned the water. And for hours, it looked like Rikers Island had just witnessed the first successful escape in decades. But then, at 10:17 a.m., a maintenance worker discovered something near the outer fence, a piece of torn gray fabric stuck on the barbed wire. It matched the inmate uniforms. Below it, footprints in the mud led toward the loading docks. And at the edge of the river, investigators found what looked like a makeshift raft, constructed from stolen mop handles, laundry bags, and empty chemical barrels. Green had made it to the water, and that terrified the city. For 2 days, the NYPD and Coast Guard searched the surrounding shoreline. News helicopters hovered above, cameras rolling as anchors called it the Rikers breakout. But there was no sign of LaMarcus Green, no body, no sighting, nothing. That's when the letters started arriving. 3 envelopes addressed to the New York Post, the DA's office, and one to a woman in the Bronx. Each was stamped with a postmark from Queens, 2 days after the escape. The handwriting matched Green's known letters from prison. The message was short, written in black ink. Rikers can't hold a man who already escaped once in his mind. The press went wild. Rumors spread that Green was living under a new identity, that he'd bribed guards, even that he'd been smuggled out in a laundry truck. The prison denied it all, insisting he drowned in the river. But there was no evidence, no closure. And then nearly a year later, federal agents investigating a major drug pipeline found something they couldn't explain. Buried inside coded messages exchanged between two high-ranking dealers in Chicago and New York was a familiar signature, LG92. The same code Green had used to authorize shipments before his arrest. They tracked one of the deals to a warehouse in Brooklyn, and what they found there would reignite the entire case. Because hidden behind a false wall was a room filled with ledgers, photos, and a single faded inmate uniform from Rikers Island. Still damp, still stained with river water. The authorities had to ask the question no one wanted to. Did LaMarcus Green ever leave Rikers Island at all? Or was someone inside helping him build his legend piece by piece? The man who controlled the island. Rikers Island wasn't supposed to have ghosts. But after LaMarcus Green vanished, it felt like the walls were haunted, not by spirits, but by his legend. Guards whispered about him during night shifts. Inmates traded stories about the king of Rikers, the one man who beat the system. But the truth was darker. Green didn't disappear from the island. He became part of it. 3 months after the escape, Warden Ellis began noticing strange patterns. Confiscated contraband, phones, cigarettes, even miniature tools started reappearing in blocks that had been cleared during the lockdown. Entire shifts of guards were moved, yet the smuggling continued, precise as clockwork. Every Friday, new packages came in through kitchen deliveries, hidden inside boxes of canned beans and cooking oil. But the trail didn't end there. When the packages were traced back to their distributor, the paperwork showed something impossible. The vendor company was registered under a fake name. And the name on the invoice? Green Logistics, LLC. The same company Green had used before his arrest to wash drug money. At first, Ellis thought it was coincidence, maybe a cruel joke. But then came the surveillance footage. A camera overlooking the East Yard captured 2 inmates meeting in the corner, one slipping a folded note to the other. When guards intercepted it, the handwriting was unmistakable. Sharp, precise, commanding. Shipment confirmed. Friday. Keep the East Corridor clear. Signed, LG. The warden's blood ran cold. He immediately contacted the Department of Corrections Internal Affairs Bureau. Within days, a special task force was formed, agents, detectives, and correctional investigators assigned to what they called Operation Blue Wall. Their mission, find out who was running Rikers Island from the shadows. The task force started small, interviewing inmates who had known Green. Most refused to talk. Others claimed they'd seen him inside the facility weeks after his supposed escape. One prisoner, a former gang lookout, told investigators that Green had been hiding somewhere deep in parts of the old facility that hadn't been used in years. Rikers has tunnels, he said, eyes darting to the door. You close one off, 10 more open up. And Green, he knows every inch of am. The claims sounded absurd. But when investigators checked the blueprints, they discovered something unsettling. Beneath the older sections of the island lay a network of utility corridors, maintenance shafts, old sewage routes, forgotten service tunnels from the 1940s. Most were sealed. Some weren't. And one of them, according to records, connected directly to the laundry block. The same place Green's team had worked before his escape. Internal Affairs went undercover. One officer, posing as a new guard, infiltrated the supply chain and traced the weekly deliveries. What he found shattered every assumption about the island's security. The shipments weren't smuggled through visitors or staff. They were coming from inside the prison itself. An entire underground economy was operating beneath Rikers' nose, led by a faceless figure the inmates called the Ghost. He handled debts, trades, favors, even protection orders. Anyone who defied him, guards or inmates, found themselves suddenly transferred, injured, or in one case, vanished altogether. Every note, every transaction, was signed with 2 letters, LG. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became. Green had never truly escaped. His body may have been gone, but his network lived on, perfectly engineered. The man who once ruled the Bronx had built a kingdom within concrete walls, untouchable, invisible, unstoppable. But one officer didn't buy the myth. Detective Marcus Lane, a veteran with the NYPD Organized Crime Task Force, believed Green was alive. He'd been part of the original arrest years ago, and something about the case had always haunted him. Green doesn't disappear, Lane told the warden. He relocates. Lane began re-examining everything. The letters, the ledger from the warehouse, the supposed escape route. What stood out most was the handwriting. Every note sent after the breakout used Green's old habits, same spacing, same angled slant, but with one major difference. The pressure marks were lighter. As if the writer wasn't the same person. It was mimicry. Someone was impersonating him. The investigation took a new turn. Lane requested access to restricted parts of Rikers, areas closed for renovation, since before Green's sentence. Beneath a rusted service hatched near the Old West Block, they found a narrow passage filled with dust, wires, and the faint smell of mold. It led to a chamber that looked like a forgotten command post, stacked boxes, a table covered in papers, and a cracked mirror hanging on the wall. On the table was a single photograph. It showed LaMarcus Green standing next to a correctional officer. Both were smiling, and written on the back was one word: partnership. The officer in the photo was Patrick Vega, the same guard who discovered Green's empty cell the night of the escape. The truth hit Lane like a bullet. Green hadn't escaped from Rikers. He'd escaped into it. Vega had helped fake the entire breakout. The unscrewed vent, the raft, the notes, all staged to throw off investigators and make Green a legend outside, while he stayed inside to run the island's underworld without interference. The ghost wasn't myth. It was management. And now, both men were gone. When Lane ordered a full sweep of the island, Vega's locker was found empty. Uniform, badge, ID gone. But inside one of the vents near Green's old cell, investigators discovered a radio transmitter and a hidden compartment lined with cash, maps, and coded letters. The last letter read, "Control the island, and you control everything that leaves it." Signed again, LG. For years, Rikers Island was said to be escape-proof. But that night proved something else. No one ever truly escapes Rikers. Some just become part of its walls. The final blueprint. They say Rikers Island remembers. Every echo in its hallways, every scream from its cells, every name whispered in the dark, it all stays. But some stories fade until the right person digs deep enough to resurrect them. Detective Marcus Lane was that person. And what he found buried beneath Rikers' concrete layers would rewrite everything the city thought it knew about crime, corruption, and control. 2 months had passed since the discovery of the hidden chamber and the photograph linking LaMarcus Green to Officer Patrick Vega. The investigation had grown larger than anyone expected. The FBI, NYPD, Internal Affairs, even the Department of Justice were now circling the island like vultures. But Lane wasn't celebrating. Something didn't sit right. The narrative was too neat. Green masterminds an empire from inside Rikers. Vega helps him fake his escape, and together they run the prison underground. But if that was the case, why vanish now? Why leave behind cash, coded letters, and a trail of clues that led straight back to them? Lane's instincts screamed one thing: it was still happening. One rainy night, as the wind tore across the East River, Lane got a call from a confidential informant, a kitchen worker who'd been on the island for nearly a decade. The voice trembled over the static. "Detective, I don't know what you're looking for, but I think I just saw him." "Who?" Lane asked. "The guard. Vega. He was in the lower laundry block. Only they closed that section years ago." Lane's heart stopped. The laundry block, the same place Green had worked, the same area connected to the tunnels under the island. Within the hour, Lane was on a boat, heading toward Rikers under the pretense of a records audit. But this wasn't about paperwork. It was about ghosts, power, and unfinished business. When Lane entered the west corridor, the smell hit first: damp concrete, bleach, and the faint trace of something metallic. The fluorescent lights, flickered like they were afraid to reveal too much. The deeper he went, the colder it got. Down a narrow stairwell, he found the sealed hatch that once led to the tunnels. Someone had recently forced it open. The bolts were still warm from friction. Lane drew his flashlight and stepped inside. The beam cut through the dark, bouncing off steel pipes and dripping water. The sound of his footsteps echoed, until another sound interrupted them. Breathing. Soft, measured, deliberate. "Vega," Lane called out. "It's over. You can't hide forever." The shadows shifted. A figure stepped forward, older, gaunt, but unmistakable. Vega. His eyes, hollow yet sharp, reflected the light like mirrors. "You shouldn't have come here," Vega said quietly. "This place, it doesn't belong to you anymore." Lane tightened his grip on the flashlight. "You're protecting him, aren't you?" "Green. Tell me where he is." Vega's expression twitched. Then, almost with pity, he said, "You still don't get it, do you? Green never left. Rikers is him." Before Lane could respond, a distant hum filled the tunnel. Machinery powering up somewhere deeper below. The walls vibrated faintly. Vega turned and began walking, his footsteps echoing through a side passage. Lane followed, heart pounding. They entered a massive underground space, a forgotten maintenance hub transformed into something else entirely. Tables covered in radio equipment, monitors showing live camera feeds from across the prison, even blueprints of the island sprawled across the walls. This was no hideout. It was a control room. And in the center of it all, sitting calmly in an old office chair, was Lil Marcus Green. Time froze. He looked older, leaner, but unmistakably composed. Dressed in civilian clothes, not a prison uniform. His hands rested on the arms of the chair like a king on his throne. "Detective Lane," he said, his voice calm, deliberate, almost cordial. "I was wondering when you'd find me." Lane stared, speechless. "You're supposed to be dead." Green smirked. "Dead men don't run empires." He gestured toward the monitors. Every screen showed a different section of Rikers. Guards walking the tiers, inmates in the yard, kitchen workers, laundry crews, all being watched. All under his gaze. "For years, they called this place unbreakable," Green said. "But Rikers doesn't need to be escaped. It needs to be controlled." Lane's voice cut through the hum. "You think you're running the system? You're a fugitive, Green." "I'm more than that," Green said. "I built something here, order in chaos. Out there, I was just another headline. In here, I became necessary. Every officer who takes a bribe, every shipment that comes through, every transfer that happens, they all pass through my hands." Vega stepped forward, lowering his voice. He turned the island into a machine. You shut it down, and the whole place collapses. Lane's mind raced. "You used Rikers to hide from the world, not to escape it." Green nodded. "And now you know. So tell me, Detective, what's the price of silence?" But before Lane could respond, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Someone had triggered a lockdown. Green's calm expression flickered, for the first time, a hint of uncertainty. Vega rushed to a console. "They're coming," he said. Someone tipped them off. Lane realized what was happening. The task force. They'd traced his unauthorized visit. He looked back at Green. "It's over." Green stood, his voice low, but steady. "No, Detective. It's just beginning." He turned toward a steel door at the end of the chamber. Another tunnel, newly reinforced. Before anyone could move, he stepped inside. Vega followed, sealing it behind them. Lane lunged forward, but it was too late. The door locked with a heavy metallic thud. Within minutes, the task force flooded in, arresting everyone on sight. But Green and Vega were gone, vanished into the maze beneath Rikers once again. Weeks later, the Department of Corrections officially declared Green presumed deceased, his escape labeled a closed case. But Lane knew better. Sometimes, during late shifts at headquarters, he'd receive encrypted emails, lines of text with no sender address. Each one said the same thing: "Control the island, control the city." Signed, LG. Today, Rikers Island still stands, its walls cracked, its legacy stained. But if you talk to the right people, guards, inmates, even detectives, they'll tell you about the night the cameras flickered, the lights went out, and the security systems rebooted. For 5 full minutes, the prison went dark. When the power came back, a single line appeared across every monitor in the control room. The island remembers who owns it. And that's why no one truly escapes Rikers. Because sometimes, the prison doesn't hold the prisoners. The prisoners hold the prison. If you thought this story was intense, wait till you hear what happened next time someone tried to challenge the island's king. Hit subscribe, because the next story will keep you up all night.